Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's July 5th, 2022 for the regular council meeting for the town of Rocky Mountain House. I'd like to, before we call the meeting to order, I just wanted to say thank you very much to Councillor Phillips for the last 8 months of being the deputy mayor. It was really helpful, and I really appreciate all his help on council and all the extra work that you've done to for our community. So thank you very much. And I'd also like to acknowledge that it's now Councillor Auld as the deputy mayor, and I look forward to having a good next 8 months with him working and helping us out. So with that said, I'd like to call the meeting to order. So the first thing I'll do is I'll do the acknowledgement of Indigenous peoples. The town of Rocky Mountain House, which is to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is Treaty 6 territory and a traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous peoples, including the Blackfoot, Cree, Saulteaux, Stoney, and Métis. Moving forward on the agenda, we'll look at adoption of the agenda 3.1 to adopt the agenda for July 5th, 2022. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Hutchinson.
I'll make the motion to adopt the agenda for July 5th, regular council meeting.
Thank you very much. All in favor? And that's carried. So I see this afternoon, I'm pleased to see that we have a delegation from Katie Jones. Welcome to council meeting, and it's about the Adventist Community Center. And if you sit right beside Miss Button and just on that microphone there, push the button so the red light turns on.
Thank you.
So welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yes.
I am one of the volunteers at the Community Adventist Center over behind the Shoppers Drug Mart. We are a nonprofit organization that's connected to our Seventh-day Adventist Church. We give away free clothes and small household items to anyone that's in need. We are in the process of putting together at least minimum of 5 fireboxes for people who have fires in the community. This community center has been up and running long before I got here. I've only been here about 1.5 years. What I have found over the last few months, and especially the last 10 days, you'll see pictures that I give you. In the last 10 days, we have taken 9 truckloads of junk that people leave. Now, because the council has voted to put a price tag on the bags and the $30 tag on a truck, we're nonprofit. I might make $3 a week. We get donations, but obviously our clientele doesn't have a lot to give. So we're wondering if we could have a free pass to take this stuff to the dump. Again, we go in on Tuesdays. Usually every day we go there and bring stuff in. Tuesdays, we try to sort through it, keep what we can keep and distribute the rest free. As you saw, there's a lot of things that people bring us that we cannot put back into the community. We wouldn't ask anybody to use this stuff. So it does have to go to the dump, unfortunately. Again, with books, it breaks my heart to put books in the dump, but a lot of it's atlases and things that are out of date, encyclopedias, things. I have put up signs. I even fudged, and now I'm going to tell on myself. I fudged it, said I have cameras up there just to try and see if I could slow some of it down. What I find mostly happens is around now, people have garage sales. So whatever they don't get rid of, they put in a box and they bring it to me and they leave it on the outside. It gets rained upon. At the moment, my coworkers and I are trying desperately to get a clothing ban. Again, we need a fabricator to do this. So we're in the process of looking and trying to fundraise for that. But again, we're back at the same thing. Once that thing is, it's like a diabetes box that you see at the extra foods. So again, you see the amount that came in 7 days, 9 days, I think that was taking, that'll fill that bin. Then I have to empty it and put it somewhere. So what we're asking is if we could have a pass to go to the dump just from the church. If we could have something like that, that we could access maybe 2 or 3 times a week to dump truckloads out would be a great relief for us. And we, again, can provide a little bit better service for the community and what we give to the community.
Okay.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Did we have any questions from council members? So I have a couple questions for
Sure.
you. So I'm familiar with the issues that you're having. Even the recycle station, that the share shed was closed because of the exact same reason that you're describing. And I know that I often will take things to the next to new. That's just my.
They give us stuff as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my normal spot, but they will often say that we're not taking donations. And another thing that the women's shelter, when you take things there, they actually will only accept things when someone's there, and you have to go through your things at the time of drop off. So I'm just wondering if you've thought about, changing your
Policy?
system for your drop offs.
Okay, well, we do have a sign that's out there that says what we accept. We encourage them to bring on Tuesdays and Wednesdays when we're there, but that doesn't stop people. And unfortunately, not to just center out the homeless people, but those are the people that most of the time we find go through the bags. And then you have these little alleyways where your driveways are. So in those alleyways now, all that stuff that they've opened is blown down into somebody else's backyard. We have a little 3-story walk-up area. I don't know what you call them. A little 3-story walk-up there. It's always in their yard. Like, that's got to be really aggravating if you live there. So again, like, all of us are retired ladies that are trying to do this. Most of us live past like Timey and Oris Road sort of thing. So there's only me and another lady that are in town. So like 3 times a day, and often in my pajamas, I will go up to the center because it's in what you call an alleyway or a breezeway. And it's wet, well, because of the rain, but it's been wet forever. And again, I have huge white signs says, please, like, I get what you're saying, because that was something we looked into in May. Again, because it's an everyday, couple days a week, couple times a day that we go up there to check the center. And it's, no matter what we do, that's why we thought of the bin. To get it, but it's a $3,000 bin. And again, we have to find a fabricator, which I haven't had any luck with. I can get one from Ontario, Oakville, but it's going to cost me as much to get it made, to get it to ship. So we are looking into things to make that a minimal. But unfortunately, Mayor, I cannot control what people do. Like I said, I fudged on a little bit of telling them there's cameras there, thinking that would slow them down, but they back in, So I'm not quite sure where to take it from here, other than we can't afford it. We have minimum of 25 to 30 people that come to our center every Wednesday. We have hundreds of items of clothes and articles that go out to our newcomers, our people that live homelessly, our Indigenous people. We would like to keep that going. We do get donations from a lady named Bonnie who runs that women's shelter. She brings us up bags of clothes every week, right? So everybody's working within everybody. And then what we don't use, we either cut it into rags and sell it at $10 to $8 a bag of rags, or we give it back to Value Village because they'll wash it. The things that we don't feel that we can use or wash. So like, I think I'm doing what you're asking me to do, but I don't know where to go from here, other than, we can't start charging people. That's just not what we want to do. Right.
Does anybody else have any questions for Katie today? Counselor Alt?
I don't have a question, but I totally sympathize with what you're going through. I don't have any suggestions or even ideas right at the moment, but
Fabricator would be nice, sir.
yeah.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't stop the big stuff. That wouldn't
No,
stop all the
unfortunately, like,
garbage.
if you'll see in one of the pictures, there's an industrial cellophane wrapper thing. Like, took 2 of us to pick it up and put it in the truck.
Chemical,
Filing cabinets, like, we can't pick this stuff up. We have to call our husbands and wait till after work and that kind of stuff. And that, again, people drive by there. That's that highway there. I'd like it to look nice for when people come by. And now that we have the happening thing on Main Street on Thursday nights. Sorry, I don't know the lingo because I'm not from here. I know it's something on Main. Yeah. You know, we like that to look nice. You know, that's our church, that's our area, this is our community.
Yeah.
We don't need that stuff hanging out all over again, that little busy corner there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, I'm open to any suggestions as far as the fabricator goes, or how to find a box, or how to slow this down. And again, with you guys charging, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yes, there definitely is a cost to garbage. There is a cost to garbage. Councillor Boniface.
If you will leave your name and number at the front desk when you leave here today,
Yes, sir.
I will look after your fabricating for you.
Oh, great. Thank you, sir. Thank you. That'll take care of our box.
Councillor Fraser.
And the mayor already mentioned, we had the same problem with the show shed with people bringing stuff. And the issue for us is that we are also charged with disposal by weight. So when we take free garbage, we're paying to get rid of that ourselves. Now, dumping garbage does have a fine associated with it. And so I know that you said that you don't have cameras, but it might deter future dumping if there were some cameras, even if they were on loan, to catch the license plate numbers of the people who are dumping. A few $2,500 fines might
Deter a little, right?
deter it. Yeah.
Apparently there was cameras there before I took over, because I just, like I said, I've only been here about 1.5 years. And they got beaten down, they've gotten broken into. Again, the gentleman who does the grounds, he said it wasn't even worth us trying to do that because they would just beat them down. Right. So there's a gentleman that's connected with the Lord's Food Bank, and he's going to put up a little take food as you need it initiative. And he's going to put a light that comes on when you come into it. But he said the same thing. The camera would get beat down big time because, again, nobody wants them to see. But we thought if they thought it was there and you know what I mean? And that might deter them a little bit. But yeah, we have thought about that, you know, to run through our phones, because everybody's got a phone, right? I know my daughter has something set up for the baby where, like, she was in Sobeys and she was talking to me on the phone. It was really creepy. So we thought about stuff like that, you know, but again, we're nonprofit. So in order for me to come up with money for that, now I have to ask, you know, Lacombe and Sylvan and all those guys to kind of give me a good collection and me go out and buy this stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead, Councillor Fraser.
Just a follow-up to that.
Sure.
I know that we've got the small grant program, and that might be, you know.
Yeah, I'm a church organization.
Okay.
Yeah, I did look into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if it's causing a problem in your neighborhood, they are your best ally. You know, maybe you could make a partnership with some of the neighbors and say, listen, we are trying to do a charity. If you see someone dumping, could you jot the license plate and the color of the vehicle down so that we can follow up when things that are refuse, like garbage are dropped off? I know that my father's company in town, we have big bins, and we've always had a problem with that because people will do it on a Sunday. And
Yeah.
there's no garbage facility open on a Sunday. And we've had neighbors and tenants write down vehicle information
Right.
on things that are dumped there. And it's being a big asset to try and keep that area a little bit more clean. We all realize that garbage fees are costly to everyone, but it's also very costly to the taxpayer to pay to haul away garbage. And the items that you're describing, they're not necessarily created by citizens in town, in the municipality. You know, like if people are spreading the word that you're taking donations, it could be people from out of town, it could be people from the county. And I'm not saying that it's just that part of that's, you know, not our responsibility as taxpayers to have to pay for that either, which is why we instituted the fees to start with. And we are very apathetic for the issues that it's going to cause, but
It must not be just me either. The gentleman in that 3-story walk up, he's the guy who calls me most of the time.
Yeah.
So he is looking out because he, again,
Yeah.
he's up against all this in his
yeah.
backyard as well, or front yard, whatever it is.
So maybe partner with him and he can, even if you
He's
could,
pretty good at calling me, madam.
even if you could get, some information and then you could ask
we
to have a
put-
conversation so that it's not happening anymore.
Yeah, we put a traffic barrier up on the side so they can't come through. So they have to come through his area so he can see, or they'll back in. Again, like I've covered all that.
Yeah.
Really, I have. I just didn't know where to go out,
Okay,
else to go.
that was all the questions I'm sorry, Counselor Phillips.
Yeah, just again, echoing Councillor All, very, very sympathetic to the cause and what's going on and how this will be affecting your nonprofit funding. You have definitely highlighted a problem, not just in Rocky Mountain House, but municipalities all across Canada, where dumping becomes someone's problem. And unfortunately, it's an issue that isn't just Rocky, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's, it'll take some unique thinking to try and solve that kind of a problem, but it's a problem that every municipality has to go through. And I just wanted to say I'm very sympathetic to your cause for sure.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, well, if there's nothing else, I believe did you have one
Do you
last?
vote on whether I can get a card? Or
We'll
how does that
discuss
work?
it later in the
Okay.
meeting.
And then someone will call me?
You
You will. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Tracy.
very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank
and
you.
thank
Ms.
you,
Jones. Have a great day. Thank you for coming. Okay, so moving forward in the meeting, we're going to go to 5.1 to adopt the regular council meeting minutes of June 21st, 2022. Is there any questions or additions or deletions on there?
Yep.
There's a problem?
Yeah.
Okay,
Under, in the minutes, under 10.2 department reports, there is a motion made by Council Fraser and it's not recorded on the minutes. Just a minor addition to the minutes.
and where is that at? Oh, 10.2, sorry. Any other issues with the minutes from June 21st?
No.
Okay,
So I will make the motion to accept minutes as amended.
thank you very much, Councillor Hutchinson. All in favor? And that's carried. Excuse me. Okay, so moving on to 6.1 delegation business, the Adventist Community Center that we just heard from Miss Katie Jones. We'll open that for discussion right now. Councillor Hutchinson.
Council Fraser had mentioned the grant program, and I realize with them being a church organization, but could we maybe put some thought into some type of an eco-centered grant program that would be for nonprofits to apply, put aside, I don't know, just for number's sake, $5,000 a year, and they could apply for a $500 pass if they're a nonprofit, including church groups, something along that line? Is that
I'm gonna
something?
defer to Mr. Kraus, who's looking up some information. So while he's looking up the grant policy for us, is there any other questions or comments? Councillor Phillips?
So, yeah, as I said during the presentation, I mean, this is a municipality problem across Canada. It's not unique to Rocky by any means. I know we do nonprofit organizations can apply for tax-free or tax exempt for the municipal portion of the taxes. Is this something that we could potentially look at for nonprofit organizations from a garbage point of view, refuse?
I hate to see people taking advantage of not-for-profits and turning them into like the garbage system, like, oh, you don't have to pay your fee, just drop it off at XYZ church and they pay the garbage fee. I don't think we want to like go in that direction, even though we're all very sympathetic, but every municipality is responsible for garbage. And my opinion is they need to adjust their accepting of donations. Like when our church takes donations, it goes through the church secretary during office hours is the only time it can be accepted. The next to new has systems in place for dealing with their stuff, whether it's the cord that says don't take stuff, no drop-offs allowed, and then you can only bring things on Thursdays and Fridays when people are there, or other situations like that. I just think they need to, personally, I think they need to adjust how they're accepting their donations to resolve. I mean, and it's not easy for sure. Councillor Fraser.
I was just gonna say that this is like a lot of issues where it's just kind of poor manners, like when people are passing the buses. I'm wondering if, because we know it's an issue, I know when we had some issues down by the women's shelter, we had the RCMP and Bylaw kind of make some extra swing bys. If they let us know, I guess, when the worst offenses happen, maybe we can let Bylaw know that they might need to keep an eye out for what license plates are stopping by there, because I do think there is a fine for dumping garbage. And I think a few of those being written might be a solid deterrent. And that would be something that even if they put cameras in a hidden spot, that they don't advertise that it's a camera in a protected box, that might be helpful. I don't think it would take very many $2,500 fines before that stopped.
Okay, I agree. I just think this is new to our community, but every other community, you know, we did research, like Innisfil doesn't accept garbage. They have a weigh scale. You have to, I mean, this is just part of the earth that we live in, and trying to do a better job and be more responsible with our waste. Councillor Boniface.
Is there any possibility that we could research a little bit before we say yes or no to this? Research what other communities are doing for their nonprofits and just to get a better handle on it.
Yeah.
And see what other people are doing. I mean, we definitely want to. These are important organizations in our town that help a lot of people. And like our next to new is always giving money to a lot of community groups and things like that. If we're only, but I also agree with the mayor that we don't want to open this up to massive garbage dumping. But we also don't want to see a valuable resource go under in our community that helps a lot of people. So maybe a little research into it would be better.
I have a question on those lines is, there's a number of not-for-profit organizations that already are not paying property taxes in our community. And I think garbage is a utility that needs to be paid for. They need to either change their methods of accepting their items. Maybe they need to put up a sign that says you can only drop off during the hours that they're there. And then they sort through it. And then the people that are, because it could be just a one-timer that's dropping, right? I've cleaned out I've had my garage sale. It's not like this is the same guy every week dropping off a 2-year-old filing cabinet. So I would hesitate to spend the time on, I mean, we definitely could see what other communities are doing. Councillor, I just think that it's not up to us. You know, we're going to give every church free garbage in Rocky, like, yeah, because like we take donations too at our church, right? But we do it, like I said, through anyways. So that's all I was gonna say, and Counselor All definitely has a.
I was gonna, along the lines of Shane, we need to figure out a system for these nonprofits. Like I know the next to new, they're gonna be getting hit with the same thing. They're constantly getting bombarded with just people dropping off garbage. And I don't feel it's the next to new's responsibility to be paying for all this either as nonprofits or any of these guys that are trying to have a system for the underprivileged in our community. There's got to be some way of finding a happy medium and not downloading that onto these nonprofit groups. Like I said before, I'm not sure what that is yet, but I think it definitely needs some more discussion and investigation.
Okay, so I think until we have some answers about maybe investigating what other communities do, would we like to just accept it for information for today and not make a decision other than that as of today, we are not going to? Like, is that how we are all feeling about it and just Councillor Boniface?
I would like to see us do that and do a little research on it. I agree entirely with you, Mayor, that we need to like limit it, because you're right, we have a lot of churches in our community. Where do we draw the line? A thought that's popped into my head, maybe it's a toonie system where there's a box there and you drop stuff off, you throw a toonie in the thing, because get enough toonies and you'll cover your garbage. So, you know, something like that. Most people would pay a toonie to drop their used clothes off, and it's just a thought, but
Yeah, so and that I thought of that instantly, and what my brain went to was we're gonna give the church or whatever organization, a community group free garbage, and then they're gonna get paid for people dropping off garbage at a discount, and then we're not training society not to donate garbage. And like, do you know what I'm saying? I think they need to train their donors that only certain things are available, whether they scrutinize the items that are dropped off and say we only drop off during these. I mean, there's a solution to it that's not going to cost the ratepayers fees. But we could definitely research what other communities do before we make the decision. Does anybody want to make a motion about
I'll make a motion that we accept this for information purposes, and at the same time ask administration to maybe make inquiries with a few other communities on how they handle nonprofit garbage.
is there any discussion to the motion? Councillor Phillips, did you have?
Nope. I was going
Okay,
to what Councilor Boniface said.
Okay, your mic was off, but no discussion. All in favor, I'll call that to a vote. And that's carried. Thank you very much. So we're moving on to 7.1, old business, the RFD for the new pickleball courts project.
Good afternoon, Mayor Bache, Council. Back before Council in regards to the new pickleball court agreement between the town and Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy was in front of Council on June 7th. We discussed this agreement on June 21st. Council's direction was to see if we can finalize the agreement with Mr. Kennedy. Wes, Mr. Ament and myself met with Mr. Kennedy on June 28th to discuss that one clause in regards to 25 years or in perpetuity. As on page 4 of the report, Mr. Kennedy is requesting that the town agrees that the pickleball courts shall be named and known as in perpetuity, and that this recreation facility shall be used for recreation purposes in perpetuity. So he's requesting that it's in perpetuity at the end of the day. So that's why I'm before council today. If we're want to go down that path in regards to in perpetuity regarding this agreement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schrader. Do we have any? Oh, yes, we do. Councillor Fraser.
I know I was stuck on perpetuity before and I'm still stuck on it. I feel that it fetters future council. And he did mention the land that was donated earlier, and I know that there's been some misunderstanding about what the clauses were there. And so my suggestion would be that perhaps it's the same clause, and the clause that was used when that land was donated was that it was to be used for recreation, or that if in future the sale of that land happened because of the growth of the community, that the proceeds from the sale of that land be reinvested back into recreation, which is what was agreed upon for the land that he was discussing. And so I think that would make sense here if he wants the same agreement. That's what the agreement was. It wasn't in perpetuity. So
I actually think that his original purpose was different than that. He wanted to avoid a future issue where the term wasn't clear. And that's why he's put in perpetuity. But I hear what you're saying, but I think that he's got it in there. And
Yeah, I was gonna say, Mr. Kennedy, I think is adamant that it is in perpetuity or the agreement will probably not take place.
Counselor Phillips, did you have something? Oh, Mr. Kraus.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. So just for some explanation to council, so it being designated MR land, automatically, if it's sold in the future, that money has to go back into recreation. So that's a legislative that would be put in there. In respect to perpetuity, in the legal aspect, I mean, that is legal. The courts recognize perpetuity clauses in agreements. But in saying that, nothing is forever. But what that clause actually does, it forces the town to renegotiate the agreement sometime in the future if there's a change. So it doesn't bind council forever. It just requires council in the future. If there's going to be a change to that land, negotiations with Mr. Kennedy would have to happen, and both parties would have to agree to that change.
Thank you very much. Counselor Fraser, did you have a follow-up for that one? Okay, Counselor Phillips and then Counselor Ald.
So, yeah, the word perpetuity in my language means forever. And I acknowledge what Mr. Kraus had said. I'm hesitant to handcuff a council 30 years, 40 years, 50 years down the road to something that's been said today. Just because the towns change and grow and evolve, and something that we've never thought of, all of a sudden 50 years from now becomes an item that this council is not even aware of, could be a thing 50 years down the road. So I like where there's some avenue where we can look at it and renegotiate in the future to be able to assess whether this stays recreational or not. I just don't like handcuffing future councils with a decision that we make in forever. That's all.
Thank you very much. Counselor Ald.
I agree with Counselor Phillips, and I'm just curious, 30 years down the road, when the council of the day decides to make a change and wants to negotiate this land, who do they negotiate with?
Well, nothing's forever, so yeah, and then Mr. Kennedy may not be around in 30 years, so it'd be the estate. If that doesn't exist, the town would have to apply to the courts for to null the agreement because the party doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
Well, if nobody else has any comments, I feel very strongly that perpetuity would be adequate in this situation. It's our community has a lot of parks and we have a lot of rec area. And for someone like Mr. Kennedy to go through the process of making such a wonderful donation for our community, I think it would be remiss on our side if we didn't we let this hold up the process and continue on. If he feels strongly about it, he's putting a pretty big donation through, and it's right now it has been trees and a vacant lot for a number of years. I think upgrading it to a park that's always going to be used for future recreation would suit our community. I certainly would never like to see the park in front of my house changed from a park to not a park. And I just want to, thinking in the long range and bigger cities, you know, if the city of New York didn't determine that Central Park was always going to be a park, then a long time ago, it would have got eaten up with skyscrapers. And that is a big asset for their community. And so I just think that recreation area where the land is donated, it doesn't cost us any capital money. He's going to put a really nice facility in, that we should agree with this and move forward with the project so that he can have it completed on the timeline that he's looking for. Counselor Boniface, did you have a follow-up?
I do. I agree with the mayor. I think the need for recreational space will always be here. It's never going to go away. And even, I mean, I really know nothing about pickleball and I don't know how long that will last. But this area is basically just off of our main street. And if this pickleball thing was to die out and we had to revamp it, we could have a place where we could do theater in the park or music in a park or whatever. It could be utilized several different ways. And with the schools around and this kind of thing, I see that area could well stay a park, and it'd be nice to have something happening there other than a bunch of derelict houses.
Counselor Phillips and then Counselor Ald. Mr.
Nope.
Kraus. So we'll do that, and then if you still have, we'll have Mr. Kraus following.
So, I mean, first of all, I mean, what Mr. Kennedy is doing, I applaud him. This is phenomenal. This is incredible. I love his ambition and his ability to, you know, make a difference in the community for sure. Mr. Kraus's explanation of, you know, 30 years down the road or 50 years down the road satisfies my need for what municipal reserve would mean. So I think that if that's the case, then I would be leaning more towards this being okay.
Thank you very much, Counselor Phillips. Counselor Ald.
Just gonna, as long as it doesn't have to be a pickleball court, 10 years down the road, if it's abandoned and we can do something else with it, I'm fine with that. If it's MR and we can still have the choice and not lock the future council of the day into a $30,000 rebuild at that point, I'm okay with that.
Mr. Kraus, did you have?
So you were maybe just for clarification for future readers of the agreements, if we can approach Mr. Kennedy and just advise if he would be willing to change 3.8, that this recreation facility shall be used for recreation purposes in perpetuity unless mutually agreed upon the parties. So it does put in there that it can change as long as it's mutually agreed upon. I mean, there is a clause for the agreement saying that this agreement can be amended by both mutual agreement by both parties, but if it's right in that one, it kind of makes it clear to the reader that it can change as long as everyone agrees to it.
So that changes what's in front of us. Instead of putting the land shall be designated for municipal reserve upon subdivision to establish the lands for recreation purposes. Could you repeat what you would put down instead again?
So your worship, it's in the RFD under comments where it says in clause 3.8, we'd be just adding unless mutually agreed upon behind the words recreational purposes and perpetuity. It just provides clarity to the readers in the future.
And in the untimely, when Mr. Kennedy is no longer with us, is there something in the contract that says it would go to his estate?
That would happen just through legal process.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't see where in here the other wording is. Mr. Kraus, where is it? What exactly would we change that line to?
So your worship, in the RFD under comments. Where it's what's the fifth paragraph down with the heading in clause 3.8,
Okay, so
where
it
the red
says,
is.
yeah, I see where that is.
So in the first sentence, it's just adding unless mutually agreed upon by the parties.
added to in perpetuity. And then not have the land shall be
No.
designated.
That remains.
That stays there. We
Yes.
just add unless mutually agreed upon by the parties.
Yes.
Thank you very much for clarifying that for me. Counselor Alt,
If there is no more discussion, I'd like to make a motion that council instruct administration to finalize the agreement with Mr. Kennedy for the construction and donation of pickleball courts to the town of Rocky Mountain House as amended. The amended agreement.
just have one question before we vote on that. Mr. Schwader, sorry. Do you feel that that would be suitable to move forward?
I do believe so. As far as it's agreed upon by the parties, then he has his opportunity to disagree if he wants to. So like I said, I'll go back to Mr. Kennedy and see if and his legal as well. So it
Okay.
shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, and again, just before are we all happy with the costs of everything? Just want to make sure I'm dotting my i's and crossing my t's. Okay, all in favor of the motion at hand? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Schwader. So moving forward on the agenda, 8.1, new business, the RFD renewal of borrowing bylaw for CEIP LOC. And we have Mr. Simcoe, I think.
So good afternoon. So the next three RFDs have to do with implementing the Clean Energy Improvement Program, which I think everybody understands reasonably well, and I don't have to dive into too much. So the first RFD is renewing a borrowing bylaw for a line of credit that will be used to fund advances to residents who've applied for loans under this program. And so it's renewing as I mentioned, it is renewing a line of credit bylaw from last year. And so we are requesting first reading of this borrowing bylaw in order to proceed. So there's nothing drawn on the bylaw right now, but there are some applications coming close to completion, so it may be drawn upon in the very near future.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions about Councillor Hutchinson?
I was doing my proofreading. Under 3A, you have load in there, which I think should be loan. To apply to ATB for the aforesaid load
In the draft of the Bible?
on the draft bylaw, yeah. And the other question I had is in the tax penalty bylaw, it states farmland is included. And so should, under number 1 on this one, should farmland be included in these dollar amounts, or is it just to be assumed it's under commercial?
So under the Municipal Government Act, under the regulations for the Clean Energy Improvement Program, farmland's included. Our municipality, I checked with Louise back when, and we don't technically have farmland. We have no parcels that would be are designated as farmland. But I included it in there so it aligns with the Municipal Government Act should something change in the future.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be in our bylaw then. It has to specifically have farmland identified.
I don't believe so. No.
Okay, it just,
Under the borrowing bylaw, does it have to specifically reference farmland?
I don't think so.
No.
okay, that was just curious on that one. And another question I had was, so we've got the limits of, I'll just use residential, for example, 10 at 30,000 a piece per year would be the maximum borrowing.
So are we talking about the borrowing bylaw? Or are we talking about one of the other bylaws?
8.1, the borrowing,
8.1?
yeah. So it's just kind of to clarify, so if, or maybe it would be under the other one.
Yeah, there's no 8.1 in the other bylaw, so.
Okay, so,
Okay, that can be on to the next.
so if there's no further questions about 8.1, could I have a motion, please? Counselor Phillips,
I'll make a motion that council give first reading to the SEEP line of credit borrowing bylaw 2022/06.
09. 06, okay, sorry. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Moving forward on to 8.2, is this your question, Ms. Hutchinson, or is it the 8.3?
Sorry, yeah, just under the RFD, just some questions on, under the comments section.
Okay,
Do you want me to go ahead?
we'll have Mr. Simcoe talk on that first, and then we'll ask your questions in case it's clarified. Go
Okay,
ahead.
sorry, what am I speaking on exactly?
The 8.2, the RFD for the tax penalty bylaw,
Okay,
is that correct?
So your worship, there's no 8.2 in the bylaw.
oh, I think we mean,
On the
Oh,
On the
agenda.
agenda, okay.
I'm sorry,
Your worship.
sorry, Renee.
I think we're moving to the.
Okay, so we're moving on to the tax penalty.
Yeah,
bylaw.
because we
Okay.
voted on the first one and it's been, it passed. So we're going on to the second.
Thank you, your
part.
worship.
Thank you.
So there's under the tax penalty bylaw. There's number 8 on the bylaw actually refers to the third and final reading thereof, that when the bylaw becomes effective. Pardon me? So a review of the tax penalty bylaw was completed in 2019, and at that time, the penalties were reduced for late payment, reducing the financial impact of penalties for residents. So that was all done previously in 2019. As the Clean Energy Improvement Program has launched, and we are getting to the point where we, the loans are going to be given out. We want to ensure that any late payment under the Clean Energy Improvement would be consistent with other penalties. And we've gone into the tax penalty bylaw and revised it to include the Clean Energy Improvement Program. For transparency and to provide information to participants, we include reference. And so what we've done is we've actually defined it. We've added a couple of whereas clauses, just so it's clear that it's incorporating the Clean Energy Improvement Program in there. And then number 1, the use of property tax covers property taxes for assessed properties, local improvement taxes, and Clean Energy Improvement Program taxes. Under number 2, any penalties applied will cover all property taxes that are outstanding on the date identified. And we are just also requesting that the previous tax penalty bylaw be rescinded or repealed. So I've put a couple of recommended alternatives there. And if council has any questions on this, please feel free.
Counselor Phillips, did you have a question?
No question, just more of a comment that it makes sense that any penalties that we do with taxes and any penalties to do with SEEP align. This is very, very common sense. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
This is not your, okay. Okay. So, did anyone make? Would anyone like to, sorry, Counselor Fraser. Yes, thank you.
If there's no further discussion, I will move that council give first reading to the tax penalty bylaw 2022-09, a bylaw to incorporate penalties for any late payments under the Clean Energy Improvement Program that are consistent with penalties for late or non-payment of property taxes and improvement taxes. Whew.
All in favor? And that's carried. And because this item doesn't affect citizens. It's more of a housekeeping. I think we should move on to number 2 on the RFD. And so I will make that, or Councillor Hutchinson, would you like to make that motion?
Sure, that council be it resolved that council second first reading?
Yeah.
Second first reading to tax penalty bylaw 2022/09.
I think it should say, give a second reading. Is that correct? What? Yes. So with that amended, yeah, give a second reading to the tax penalty bylaw 2022/09. All in favor? And that's carried. So I'll make the third motion. Be it resolved that council give unanimous consent to move to a third reading of the tax penalty bylaw 2022/09. So that we can move forward. All in favor of that? And that is carried. So we need a fourth motion. Councillor Phillips.
Make a motion that council give third and final reading to tax penalty bylaw 2022/09.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that? And that's carried. So moving forward in the agenda then, we're going to 8.3, the RFD revised clean energy improvement tax bylaw.
Thank you, your worship.
Yes, thank you.
So basically this bylaw is going back and we're requesting that we repeal the old bylaw and bring this new one in. Some of the changes to the bylaw actually provides clarification to some of the processes that we've made some tweaks to since in starting the program in November 2021. As well, we've changed the reference in the bylaw from commercial to non-residential, so it's more consistent with the Municipal Government Act. I have consulted Alberta Municipal Services Corporation, the program administrator, in the changes in the bylaw, and they have contributed to some of these changes as well. So just to give you a little bit of background, the initial clean energy improvement tax bylaw was passed on December 3rd of 2019 after a public hearing for same to allow the municipality to participate in the program. The bylaw has changed several times since it was initially brought in, and that was because of changes to the program administrator. There were several changes. So initially it started as EEA or Energy Efficiency Alberta, then it was changed to Municipal Climate Change Action Center, and then finally to Alberta Municipal Services Corporation. So every time the program administrator changed, we had to come back and revise the bylaw. The current revision, again, provides clarity and changes that reference to from commercial to non-residential. So it's consistent with the MGA. At this time as well, I've also put in the report that we would like to have a discussion with council at a committee of the whole meeting or another meeting to discuss the desire of council to proceed with a non-residential portion of this program. So it would be the Clean Energy Improvement Program, but for non-residential participants. I've talked to Alberta Municipal Services Corporation, who is also willing to attend that meeting to provide some information from the provincial side. And that's one of the resolutions at the end here that I've also provided, just to maybe establish a date for that. I have included all of the resolutions from previous council meetings that kind of speak to the changes to the bylaw that have occurred, because there are some significant changes that you'll see in red on the bylaw. I also felt it was prudent to advertise the bylaw again. So we're looking for first reading today. And there would be a public hearing provided again if people wanted to attend. At the last meeting when we did the initial bylaw, we did have a public hearing and we had only people who were in support of the bylaw that attended. So just to go through some of the comments, under whereas clauses, commercial has been changed to non-residential and farmland has been added to align with Municipal Government Act. The program administrator's name has included operating as Alberta municipalities, and that was at their request that we included that under the program administrator's name. Under title and purpose, I've added a couple of sections. just to provide some clarity, referencing part 10 and division 6.1 of the MGA and providing notice that the bylaw works in conjunction with the clean energy improvement line of credit bylaw. We've added definitions as well, just for some clarity. And then under general requirements, I've added several clauses. Sections 5 to 10 were added again, just providing clarity to responsibilities and delegation under the CAO. Other clauses were amended to align with the reference to the non-residential rather than commercial. As definitions were added, changes were made to municipal references to align with the town. So it's changed from municipal to town because we've provided that definition. And then changes were made to align with processes since the implementation of the program in our municipality. So sections 16D, E, and F were changed just because one of the things that we noted, and it's kind of like risk mitigation, we wanted to include safety code issues in our reviews. We wanted to ensure that the responsibility lies with the participant to ensure that they have approval from their mortgagers. And then to move on, section 20, a clause was added to ensure failure of an owner to append an agreement to a sales contract does not invalidate the imposition of the tax. So one of the things we are doing is we are putting a caveat, we're registering a caveat on title for any properties that are participating in the program, which also kind of provides notice to somebody looking to purchase. But we wanted to add that clause in the bylaw just as another risk mitigation kind of clause. Section 21 reference to one tax line for multiple upgrades, and that's just under the regulations. The repayment of the loan under a SEEP upgrade cannot exceed the lifetime of the improvement, and we've put a cap on that of 20 years. So if somebody does multiple upgrades, we would only have one line on the tax certificate, that it would be one line for the clean energy improvement program. But under that, each upgrade may have a different term. So windows, for example, I think it's 15 years, but solar panels are 20. So if they did windows and solar panels, one loan would be for, like, one term would be for 20 years, the other one for 15. But we would only have one line on the tax certificate, and there'd be kind of a back end kind of accounting for the difference in the term.
So on the tax certificate, would it say, if you had two different levels, would it say the 15 or the 20? Would it take the smaller one or the maximum one?
I don't know that the tax certificate would actually list the term. The amortization schedule that we provide under the agreement would have a listing of the amortization, which would be over the 20 years, but essentially at the 15-year mark, the windows would be paid off. And so all they'd be paying for the additional 5 years would be the solar panels, for example. Just an example of the different terms for the different upgrades. And the program administrator website actually lists the term, like the lifetime of the estimated useful life of that upgrade.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. It's a bit complicated.
Yeah.
So, on the back end, I feel very grateful to have corporate services, because I don't think that's not my forte. And, so we work together to try and ensure that the proper processes are followed and that we have documentation for everything. So under section 23, the reference for technical application was removed, as requirements are covered under terms and conditions and program administrator requirements. So on the provincial website, it lists the town of Rocky Mountain House's terms and conditions, and that information is included in there. So we removed it from the bylaw. Right now, what we're looking to have first reading of the bylaw to provide clarity and to change that reference from commercial to non-residential. We would schedule a public hearing for August 2nd to allow public feedback on the bylaw. And we would advertise in accordance with section 606. Also looking for council resolution for a date to present to council regarding a non-residential program under SEEP. And if there's any questions.
Thank you very much.
You're
Just
very
looking
welcome.
around, Counselor Phillips has a question.
When this program first initially came out, and thank you, Renee, for the amount of work you've done on this.
You're very
Being
welcome.
being the first to roll out a program is great, but there's also that blazing the trail and making everything work. So thank you for all the work you've done on it.
You're very welcome.
Residential was always the first phase of the program, and then rolling it out to non-residential was kind of the next phase, and that's probably where we're sitting now. So it makes sense that we have a meeting to discuss that.
You know, and just on that, the city of Edmonton has approved one non-residential project. You know, we were trying to be the first with this program, and we were I think will be the first to actually complete a project. The non-residential is the first of its kind in Canada, and there's a team working, and so it's not just myself that should take credit, but we have a really fantastic team that has put in a significant amount of work. And yeah, so we're just really happy to see the feedback from the community. We've really had a lot of inquiries from other municipalities, and we provide as much information back to them so that they can get started on this program as well. So
Are these changes coming from the municipal government, like through AV Muni or whatever corporation? Or is it just things that we are figuring out on our own? Like, are they giving good support back to upgrade all of this?
So are you talking about the bylaw now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of the changes came about just because of things that we kind of didn't think of in advance, right? So for example, there's this section in here that we talk about. Just let me find it. It's where it references that the amount of their mortgage plus the amount of the clean energy improvement loan cannot exceed the assessed value. And, you know, one of the things that we talked about is just, it was as we kind of started the program, we were like, oh, you know, as a kind of risk mitigation and to be responsible in how we implement this program, we wanted to make sure that we're not only protecting ourselves, but we're protecting other people, such as mortgagors
Mhm.
that are providing, you know, a mortgage to a client. We
Mhm.
want to make sure that should something happen, that they aren't able to follow through with their payments, that we would be able to recover it. That this program is intended as a cost recovery program. And the intent is that it doesn't cost people who don't participate in the project or in the program. It shouldn't be costing our taxpayers or ratepayers any money. So, you know, those are some of the risk mitigation things. The other thing was that we had meetings with the province regarding our different bylaws, and the city of Edmonton as well was involved in this process. But we had a meeting with the program administrator, and they requested that we change the reference from commercial to non-residential, so it aligns with the Municipal Government Act. We wanted commercial at the time when we wrote the bylaw initially, so because it seemed more transparent, that it was very clear what we were referencing. But they said by using the references under the Municipal Government Act, it's more consistent. So
Thank you very much.
you're very welcome.
Did we have any other questions or comments? Counselor Fraser?
There is no more discussion. I will move that council give first reading to the Clean Energy Improvement Tax Bylaw 2022/10 to provide clarity to the program and align with commercial references to non-residential references consistent with the Municipal Government Act.
Thank you very much. All in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
Your worship, if I could also have council look at the second recommended alternative and the third. Thank you, your
Yep.
worship.
Counselor Albury, going to make a motion towards that?
Yep,
Yeah,
I'll make the motion.
thank you very
Council
much.
instruct administration to provide notice and make arrangements for a public hearing for clean energy improvement tax bylaw 2022/10 for Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022 at 1 p.m.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. And are you looking for the third motion as well today?
Yes, your worship. if possible. If not, then we can certainly have a discussion on August 2nd to set a date as well. So
Counselor Hutchinson.
Can we make that resolution without putting a date and have it say admin look for a date that's workable for all of us?
Yep, your worship, we can do it that way. I would suggest September because we also counsel a report on incentives for development under our strategic plan, which is due in September. So we combine both topics into one committee of the whole meeting. If September would work for council.
And do we have that? We don't have that date set yet.
We do not have that date set.
So we could say just September meeting time.
Administration establish a committee of the whole meeting in September. Go from there.
Counselor Hutchinson, did you want to make that
Yeah,
motion?
I'll make that motion. Do you want it reread?
Mhm.
That administration arrange a committee of the whole meeting for September to discuss the non-residential portion of the clean energy improvement program.
Is that right? Okay, all in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Thank you very much.
thank you, your worship and council.
So 8.4 Eco Center fee relaxation.
Good afternoon, your worship and council. Again, I'm honored to bring this one as directed by council previously regarding a relaxation of drop-off fees. In this instance, it was requested for a one-time following the biannual Kick It to the Curb event. So we looked at various options, including the county landfill, having a one-day there, or running it on a Saturday and Sunday. And the option that provides the best service to our residents and sort of aligns with that is sort of a week-long event. It reduces the impact of the eco center and allows us to continue regular operations and provides multiple opportunities for residents to take advantage of that initiative. It also makes sense to have it as a reoccurring event following Kick It to the Curb, we believe. And that way people can, part of their biannual cleanup and whatnot sort of folds into that, and we can, keep that sort of initiative alive and see how it goes. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Just an aside question for council. Do you think this would assist with the problem we heard earlier with the community center? Maybe they could streamline their program to match up with our Kick It to the Curb dates. And then they would have free, with that. Do you think that would solve two birds with one stone? Do you think that's reasonable? Counselor Hutchinson?
I think it could be part of their solution. I think there's still more to go with it, but I absolutely love this idea. And I think that the 5 days a week at a minimal cost is something that our residents are really going to appreciate, especially with the charges that are starting this month.
Counselor Fraser and then Counselor Ault.
It was more of a comment. I know that there was some distress when spring cleanup ended, and I think when we put the cost out there, I think it makes sense to a lot of people now, but I think this addresses the share shed issue with the Kick It to the Curb. I think this addresses the spring cleanup, and now there's actually going to be, if we have 2 Kick It to the Curb events, we actually now have 2 cleanup events at no cost. So I think this is on multiple fronts. I think this was a good solution. So
Thank you very much. Counselor Ault.
Just to be clear, it's only that week long would be after the second Kick It to the Curb, only in September, correct? What you have for that $5,000, that would just cover a one time.
Yeah, that's for each week-long event, yeah. So, because we're anticipating that's the cost for the additional bins. Again, those are high estimates, so fairly conservative with those.
I like the idea of it, just having the one in September. It's a lot, just do one a year. I think this definitely addresses some consumer or some resident issues. I don't think this addresses the issue with the drop offs and the garbage yearly with these nonprofit folks. It might, for the week that they have them dropped off, it would work, but not for the year-long process.
Okay, is there any more discussion on this item? Did you find that leading up to the charges that started the 1st of July, that you saw a dramatic increase in the amount of waste that was, or was that tracked at all?
It was, so we did confer with Impringham Services, who runs the Eco Center, and they did not notice like a huge increase in the volume. It was maybe slight, but again, that could have been due to environmental factors or whatnot, but it's not like we saw twice or even 1.5. It was maybe 10% more. It wasn't anything we could do, directly relate to the starting of fees or
Yeah.
whatnot. So
I'm just trying to mitigate costs
Oh.
for September, right? Like if it was like a,
yeah,
you know,
and in
a
determining
dramatic,
those volumes,
change.
we did reach out to other municipalities, and they sort of confirmed that actually the volumes for these one-time events is not as significant as we might think, because again, people don't tend to store these
right,
things for months and months.
not holding on to their garbage that long. Okay, excellent. Is there any more discussion?
I would like to, I mean, we could definitely do the 1 September. I would like to see it for twice a year, but maybe that's something we bring up at service level. But
Mhm.
if there's no other discussion, I'd like to make the motion that council approve a week-long free eco center drop-off following Kick It to the Curb, starting on September 20th to 24th, 2022. The funds will be allocated from the waste transfer station contracted services account at a cost of $5,000.
Thank you very much. All in favor? There's no other discussion, and that's carried.
Thank you very much, your
Thank
worship
you
and
very much,
council.
Mr. LaFrance. So moving forward in the agenda, we turn to Mr. Ald, a code of conduct bylaw.
So. You're good.
Do you want me to go? I was gonna go at 2:30.
Okay, so for this 8.5 code of conduct, there is some serious code of conflict interests with council code of conduct. So I have drafted a form that I'm going to have Tracy to hand out to all of council to peruse. And then as far as discussion, I'm not sure exactly. I'm going to defer to Mr. Kraus as far as what is discussed and what is not at this point.
So I think we should take at this time a brief 10-minute recess so everybody has a chance to read through the document that Councillor Ald has presented before we come back and discuss it, so that and then it still works with our timeline. So I call a brief 10-minute recess. Thank you. Very much. Let's get on my laptop up again. So we'll return back to the meeting for July 5th, 2022, regular council meeting. And we right now are on 8.5 Code of Conduct brought forward by Councillor Dave Auld. So because this item actually doesn't discuss the bylaw and we were not given this information beforehand, I'd like to table this to the next meeting. But if you would like to, Mr. Auld, read your statement, I would be fine with that before tabling it.
I don't know if you're gonna read it here, if we need to just figure out how we're gonna address the complaint. Do we need to go through it, Mr. Gross, or do we appoint to how we're gonna investigate?
So your worship, so under the code of conduct bylaw, a formal complaint now has been submitted.
Mhm.
The next step for council is to appoint an investigator into the complaint. So the role of council right now is to determine if council is going to investigate the complaint themselves. Have a lawyer investigate the complaint on behalf of council, or hire a third party to investigate the complaint.
Okay, well, I feel that the complaint is full of inaccuracies, conjecture, and assumptions. And so however you'd like to proceed, I'm fine with that.
So your worship, the next step is for council to discuss of how they want the complaint investigated.
All right. Councillor Auld.
So I would like to suggest that we hire our HR component to go through this investigation as an outside official, not somebody that's involved in the complaint, not somebody that has been part of anything. They're totally biased and would be the way that I would like to see this move forward.
Do you mean non-biased?
Yeah.
Councillor Phillips?
Yeah, if we're, dealing with this, this code of conduct violation, I think a third party would be the best way to go, so that we're not putting council in a position where council has to make that decision. I think a third party is the best way to go.
Councillor Fraser?
I agree. I think a third party would be the fairest and doesn't put anyone in a position where they have to make decisions that they're part of. So I think a third party makes the most sense. Just following our own bylaws.
Councillor Boniface?
I'm not familiar with the HR that Councillor Auld is speaking about, so could someone fill me into that, please?
Maybe Mr. Kraus could.
Your worship, so administration uses an outside HR company to investigate any complaints that we have, like for various reasons among staff, like HR, harassment, bullying, that type of thing. So it's always an independent third party that investigates those type of incidences.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we table this? Councillor Auld?
I'd like to make a motion that we hire an outside third party to investigate the code of conduct complaint.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote, and I'd like to abstain from that vote. So all in favor? And that's carried. So that puts the end to 8.3, and it's not tabled then. I'm sorry, 8.5. So moving forward, correspondence for information. Is there any discussion about any of the items in 10.1 to 10.3? Counselor Phillips or Counselor Hutchinson, did you have a comment or did you want to just make a motion?
If you have a comment?
Yeah,
Councillor
yeah,
Hutchinson?
just
Okay.
a quick comment about 10.1, the Alberta Housing Amendment Act, that I've taken a few webinars on that, and it's been discussed through senior housing. And it's not looking like a very lovely direction to have to go through. It's the idea of it is supposed to help things, but for volunteers that are in a lot of these board positions, they're wanting a scoring matrix to fit people into the positions. And just for information, it's could be a lot of work for our senior housing group coming up, or any across the province, just because now it's almost like you have to qualify to be on a volunteer committee. So that's just kind of a quickie on it. If anybody had any other questions, we can talk about it at another, later date or different time.
So your worship, just following up with Councillor Hutchinson, do you want us to bring this back as an action item for council's discussion?
No, just, if anybody's read through and they had any questions. And I may be able to answer anything on it because I've sat through the Zoom meetings and.
So, yeah, just from administrative perspective and in advising council, it is actually something I would recommend to council to oppose. Because it does take a lot of volunteers of these type of board positions. And then what's also on the table right now is review of the Local Authorities Election Act. So it's almost, is this going to happen down on that side too? So.
Thank you very much. So we'll have Counselor Phillips make, did you have a comment, Counselor Auld?
Actually, I had a comment now.
Okay.
Just discussion. This was brought up, and I believe it was the RMA convention. It was brought up during the ministerial forum that this decision is going to create a problem with the volunteers to be able to have to qualify for a volunteer position. So it's definitely something that is going to cause problems for sure.
It was at the RMA, and they also had somebody from Alberta Housing speak that morning. Counselor Fraser, did you have a comment or did you want to make a motion?
No, it was more of a comment or a question to council if maybe we wanted to reach out to other municipalities or write a letter to the province in conjunction with the other municipalities to outline our issues so that does at least reach the table of the provincial government who will be making decisions on it, so that we oppose the changes.
Counselor Hutchinson?
Am I correct, Len, at that RMA was taking that already an AM to the next level?
It wasn't a resolution. It was just a question to the minister. So it wasn't something that RMA was taking on as an action item.
My recommendation is for today, why don't we accept it for information and we can always bring it back forward after we have a little bit more information about it. We could reach out. Or we could just accept it for information. We're not going to do anything with it as long as we know that how Mr. Kraus and we all agree his perception of it. We could just accept it for information and move forward. Does that sound fair? Or do you want to reach out to other municipalities?
Tina is the one who, or Mr. Counselor Hutchinson is the one who has had the most experience as she sits on the housing board. So I will defer to her knowledge if we want to table it or come back to it later.
Well, the requirements or the evaluation of the volunteer members, the matrix isn't required until 2023, I believe it is. So I know ASHA, there's a number of the senior housing groups that are kind of lobbying against it already in doing that. So it might be something that we could just take for information now, and as more information comes up through the senior housing and ASH, we could certainly revisit it.
Okay, Counselor Phillips, did you want to make that motion?
For sure. I'd like to make a motion to accept items 10.1 through 10.3 as information.
Thank you very much. All in favor? And that's carried. So moving on to 11.1, the mayor's report. Had to do with FCM. And so I wanted to talk about a couple items that didn't get attached originally, but are attached now. I went to FCM for 3 days, as well as attending the opening ceremonies and keynote speakers, the Alberta Caucus, and all the other networking and trade show events. The items I found most interesting and relevant were the FCM housing solutions. They had a panel that was really quite interesting. Lyndall was a Halifax City Councillor, and I actually was able to talk to him later because he just did a really great job presenting the information. And then there was the Crystal from Affordable Housing and Homelessness in Edmonton, and Jennifer from the Canadian Urban Institute of City Building, and Lorianne for the city of Quesnel, and she was the Union of BC Municipalities. And then there was a senior economist from Vancouver. And they brought up all the things that the city of Montreal was doing. Housing was definitely a very hot topic. Affordable housing, incentives for developers to include a certain percentage of units in new residential developments as affordable housing. So some of the ideas that they brought forward that they were doing there, that other municipalities, and this, a lot of it talked to cities, but there was quite a few of us smaller communities there. Like the gentleman that sat beside me was from Orangeville. He was the mayor of Orangeville, Ontario, which is quite a large city. But we still, like, we had a opportunity to network with who is right beside you. And everyone is obviously seeing the same issues in housing. There's not enough housing, and rising housing costs are creating some issues. Winnipeg was the study that they did most of this on. They also just had it was a really great seminar to participate in. So some of the ideas that they presented for like bigger cities is that when you have an R1, they want to make it inclusive. So the traditional days of doing R1 residential subdivisions where it's only like single family homes with, 3-car garages or some of the things that you can put for caveats on, they're trying to incorporate multifamily or apartment buildings in those big subdivisions in some of the bigger centers, because they feel that the inclusiveness, some of the people are being excluded from those nicer neighborhoods because there's no lower income or multifamily housing available. So that was just one of the things that I thought was really interesting. The city of Edmonton is passing some bylaws so that you can, or they're looking at being able to put like a mother-in-law suite in the backyard, or being able to things like that. So that was really interesting. The other like topic that I really enjoyed was I went on did you have a question on that or?
I just wanted to mention that when we updated our land use bylaw, a lot of that was incorporated. I know secondary suites are in there, as well as kind of expanding. I know there's the mixed that helps kind of bridge from commercial to residential and expands what is allowed in each district to kind of bring that mixed market that's been part of the discussion. So that is in there if people are interested.
Yeah, it was a really great, even though they were like from big cities, it was really interesting. The next thing that was really awesome, we were allowed to choose a tour to go on as part of our day. And so I went to the Mamawayatitin Center. And basically what it is, it's an inner city high school that did a lot of consultation with outside groups. They don't have a friendship center there for a number of years, but they did consult with the Indigenous population as that they were like a large majority of residents in that area. And then I highlighted a bunch of the things, but one of the things that we went through there. So I'll just list some of the really exciting things that I thought, wow, that's really great to incorporate that in a school. So it required work with the municipality, the provincial government, and then the federal government as well, because they have an RCMP office right in the high school. So for example, if somebody's on probation, they can check in at the high school with their probation officer. And then they're sort of encouraged to go to school, like, so they can do that at school, which I thought was kind of cool. They also have a high school program for students who want to enter the RCMP. So they were finding that students from all over the province who are interested in going into Depot would go and complete that program in high school. So they had a large number, like an influx of students from all over, he didn't exactly say where, but I was assuming the province, to attend high school at that high school. Now, this is an area that was like inner city, like all the negative things you can think of, vandalism and all that. It's a fairly new school, but it looks like it was built yesterday. There's no graffiti, there's no, nothing. They take really good pride in that school. And I think that was because they've had such community development, or consultation and interest in the program. There's an elders room and other community services offered in the school. They share a kitchen with community groups like Chili for Children, who feed 97,000 years a meal to for free. That's a not-for-profit that does that. So that was really cool that the not-for-profit could go and borrow the high school kitchen and then they could get help and then continue on with that program. The IA lab shares space with community groups for artwork and things like they did a bear hide scraping when we were there. They had and they do some really cool projects. They have some of the IA lab they can block off so that they don't bother the tools and stuff when they have outside groups come in and do like art days, but they had really cool art desks and they have a kiln in the other art lab. They actually have an art room attached on the back of their stage, attached to the gymnasium, so that they can make their sets for plays and things like that. And then the stage is there and then the gym is on the other side. So it was like, where do we store all the stuff? Well, we made it here, so then we'll bring it like that. It was just like someone really thought about making that. That was like really good thinking. They have a gymnasium that opens up with big glass sliding doors that opens up to the community space that opens up to outside. So if they have things like round dances and stuff, then they have a place for people to sit out at the side, and then a place for the round dance, and then access to outside. They have a smudging room, like again, because of the Indigenous population. The playground features a medicine wheel park, a community garden. And I'm like, you guys don't have deer because they did not have a fence around it. But it was like, they had a community garden, which is like amazing that they, they're looking to build a herb and traditional plants garden somewhere on the site, but they're fairly new and they haven't really decided where they're going to do it or how they're going to do it. Their medicine wheel park was like a medicine wheel, and they had 4 rocks there, and each of the rocks represented First Nations, the 4 First Nations sort of that are part of that community, including Métis. There was a public library, is the high school library. So they made the high school library a public library, and then they pooled their funding. So when the school was open, the public library is open to the public. I thought that was just like really great. Elders room I mentioned, community games room, a smudging room, prayer room. Oh, and elders have actual offices there. So just like a teacher might have an office, they had offices for community elders. And so I thought that was kind of neat that they incorporated that. So it would be sort of like if we incorporated the Friendship Center and the community center and the library in with the high school. It was just, I was just really excited about that. Then the other thing that there was two other things that I really liked. The plenary on the future of municipal government. So Senator Bernadette Clement, she is from Ontario, and she's a lawyer who's a mayor, who's my dad's first cousin. So we did the tour of the school together, and then following that was her presentation. So I was like especially excited to be in that. But there was also the Senator Paula Simons, who's a senator from Edmonton. So I thought that was really awesome that we have like a lady senator, you know, from our area participate in this panel. Mayor Amarit Sohi from Edmonton and Mayor Rebecca Alty from Yellowknife. And she is really great, that Rebecca Alty. She had great ideas from Yellowknife. She's very young and full of energy and lots of ideas. And they talked about the future of municipal government in the idea that we are dealing with like sometimes global issues in our communities. We're responsible for providing the care that we give now, you know, for roads and water and things like that, and all the things. And then we're being downloaded some of the other things that used to be like a provincial or even a federal thing. And so they talked about the rapidly changing landscape, adapting to on the ground leadership, because we can make decisions a lot quicker in our municipality than maybe like the federal government could do. So we can make changes a little bit more proactively. And we're tackling a lot of challenges. And then they really talked about how municipal governments can start working with federal governments for programs and things directly. Like usually we go to the province and the province goes to the feds, but now they're talking about how can municipalities access like the federal money and things like that. And I know FCM is doing a lot of work for that. How do we pave the path to more prosperous, equitable, and vibrant communities in the 21st century? So that was really great. And then on the last day in the morning, they had the elections for the FCM, which is the mayor of Penhold, Mark Yargo, won. So he's one of the directors for FCM across Canada. And like Len and I have met him a number of times. He's a really great guy. He's just a small town. So I just wanted to point out that Katie Berghofer, she also was elected on that Sunday morning, and she's a councillor of Strathcona County. And the current president is Tanine Ruddick, and she's a town councillor for the town of Vegreville, Alberta. So there's lots of opportunities for rural or smaller municipalities to be involved at the FCM on the bigger stage to you know, ask for things and to have our voices heard in bigger politics. The last thing I did before I flew home, because we had like a 2.5 hour lunch break, was there was a powwow in Regina at the hockey rink that was attached to the thing. And so instead of going for lunch, I went to that powwow. So I have a little blurb about a powwow because a couple of people have asked me lately, what is a powwow and what happens there? So I basically took my description of what it is, because I post pictures on my page about what it was for the people who've never attended or are new to it. Because like I said, I've had a lot of questions, and we just had a powwow, and a lot of this information is from the powwow that the Friendship Center did in Red Deer in September. They gave this beautiful color brochure that described and explained everything really nice. And I'm going to see if they'll print more, because it's just a really great piece of information. So that was just really exciting when we went to FCM. And I mean, we went to like all the other things as well, but those were the sort of like most exciting things. And if anybody wants, they can go on the FCM website and then you can click on the seminars. Like Tina, you went back and watched one of them, right? Yeah. Did you just on the time management one, right?
No,
Did a couple? Yeah. Yeah. So when you have, you know, there's a trade show and you're meeting people, I also jumped on a tour of going through the whole arena thing. And saw the back end of the site just during a break on, I think it was the first day that we were there. You had time to do the trade fair, and I just hopped on with these people from New Brunswick. So anyways, it was a really good and interesting time. Did anybody have any questions or
I didn't have any questions. I was just gonna accept the mayor's report for information.
all in favor?
No,
Oh, you have a
Sorry.
question?
yeah,
Yeah, okay, so just before we do that.
yeah, just on your report, I was just wondering if you could kind of get into a little bit more on your meeting with Sunchild First Nations.
So all I did was do a meet and greet like Mr. Bruno suggested. So we didn't discuss any topics. I just went in and gave them donuts and said, "Hi, my name is Debbie." And that was the meeting. They were very receptive to having a meeting with all of us. They gave me the contact information. Like their concern was that they would really like to, we didn't talk about any issues, but I never said anything, but they suggested to me that they had some communication breakdown during the emergency in the county, and that emergency services agreement moving forward would be really nice, so that they had like the phone list of, the road was closed and people were rerouted through the reserve. And then the band manager's name is Harry Goodrunning. He couldn't get through it to anyone at the county to find out more information of what was actually happening. And the fire was like 30 kilometers from their home. So they were very worried about that, but they're very receptive. I met most of chief and council. I think there was just one gentleman that wasn't there. And all it was, "Hi, we are open to have discussions with chief and council, and we'd really like a better relationship like Mr. Bruno suggested." And I didn't have any further, I didn't discuss anything of interest other than I got all their names. I got the email address for Shane, and I gave the information to Tracy, so that when we want to get a hold of chief and council at Sunchild, we know to get a hold of Harry, and he's a phone guy rather than an email guy. And so Shane is the email guy. So I got all their contact information for Tracy, and now that Mr. Kraus is back from holidays, they can figure out our next step. So that's all it was. And then, of course, this weekend when Ochis had their rodeo, because I didn't put it in the report because it's not the cutoff, but just because we're talking about it, I gave an opening welcome on behalf, as I was asked, on behalf of the town of Rocky Mount House for the rodeo. And I met a lot of chief and council, and some of which obviously I knew from before, for when they had their presentation here. And I said the same thing to them. So I know Mike Larondel asked me to set a meeting, and I said, "I don't set meetings." I will give that information to Tracy. And so Tracy is aware of it. And I'm sure after their busy 4 days that they're not anxious to meet tomorrow, because I saw Mike last night and he was going to take a couple days off after such a busy weekend. But it looks, the direction that we've been asked to go in. I've followed what Mr. Bruno has asked us, and I met some cousin of his Saturday night at the dance. So that was kind of cool. Yeah. So, yeah. Any other questions before we vote on the motion at hand? Okay. All in favor of accepting the minutes for? Yep. Accepting my report for information, sorry. And that's carried. Thank you very much. So we'll move down now to Councillor Auld. Did you want to talk about anything in your report?
No.
Okay. Councillor Caprero, did you want to bring up or highlight anything? Councillor Fraser?
No, other than, I guess, apologies. The Learning Center had opened their new location and they had a wonderful grand opening. It's great to see them in that space. So.
Oh, excellent. Right on. Thank you. Councillor Hutchinson, did you want to talk about anything that you discovered at the FCM that would be interesting?
I have attached a report with mine. I don't know if we need to go through everything on it. Some of the resolutions that were made, which I thought was quite interesting, was the calls to action for the missing children, unmarked graves, addressing period poverty in Canada, which actually there was something on Facebook about somebody writing into the provincial government wanting clarity on that. So the Canada Community Building Fund, the gas tax fund renewal, and support for Ukrainian refugees. So those are 4 items that the FCM will be lobbying for, representing all municipalities across Canada. So it was kind of interesting to see how that works. Again, I have a report in there, and if anybody has any questions or wants referrals, how to find that page or stuff, just let me know. But so the ICC meeting that we had all attended, I know we've all been scheduled for an afternoon session. So the first one was we kind of did a brainstorming session to discuss goals and the timeline and how we're going to work that out. And then we've got the meeting scheduled through next month to continue on with that. Rec board, we're off for the summer, and I think I had said last month that the matrix will be presented in September. I also attended the Rocky Learning Center, as well as the Rocky Pregnancy Care Center grand opening, which is a really awesome facility. Did a meet and greet at Westview Lodge with the senior housing, and all of a sudden it was like 3.5 hours were gone by with talking to the seniors. It was a really good time. And I think that's about it.
Did anybody have any questions for Ms. Hutchinson? Your light's on, that's why I'm asking you.
Oh,
No, that's fine. I was just checking that I'm not missing you. Counselor Phillips, did you want to talk about your report?
So my FCM report's in here as well, so anybody can read that as well as my Alberta Municipalities Leadership Caucus report as well. The biggest thing at FCM I found was interesting was they actually had a rural plenary session, which is rare that they actually get into the rural part of things. So it was kind of nice to talk about rural infrastructure needs and how the refugee demand from Ukraine is not just impacting the cities, it's impacting the rural residents as well, and how we can help and how we can, make things better for people of another country. And just that, our rural population is aging faster than urban. I know we consider ourselves urban, but I consider ourselves rural as well as urban. So how that demographic is changing rural Alberta and rural Canada as opposed to urban Canada, and climate change literacy for councils, that we need to have more information on what climate change is, what it's doing, how it's going to impact us as a municipality, because it's happening around us. There's more floods, there's more droughts, there's more severe weather events. We had a wildfire close to Rocky not too long ago. So just how that climate literacy for council, so that we have a better understanding in the decisions that we're making. At the Alberta Municipalities Leadership Caucus, one of the things that I found, I'm not sure if admin is aware of this or not, but asset management training is offered through Alberta municipalities. We are, okay. I wasn't sure if we were aware of that or not. Talked about the EPR coming into play in Alberta, and how that's being not fast tracked, but it happened a lot quicker than what people were thinking. So that's a very good thing. How emergency medical services, the changes that the province has made, how that's impacting. It's still early to tell if that's making a huge impact, but it seems to be helping the rural municipalities with keeping ambulances here in our municipality. And also LGFF funding models. We actually sat in tables, and each table got to go through and describe what we like to see in the LGFF funding model. And it was nice to be part of that process. So we're not just saying this is what Alberta municipalities is saying. I was actually at the table helping to come up with ideas for that policy. So that was kind of interesting. And the Power Plus program, again, I'm not sure if admin is aware of the Power Plus program. So Alberta municipalities it's called a Power Plus program. And basically we can get our electrical requirements through them at a discounted rate. We did it. Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
This is a better rate for municipal buildings, right?
Yeah.
Separate, not for the town, but just for town owned buildings.
And then also the FCSS, we had a full day strat plan session. So it was kind of interesting to see from the old strat plan to what the new strat plan for FCS is. The same ideas are still there, but there's a lot more focus on FCSS becoming the hub to give information to get people to where they need to be, as opposed to trying to be all and do the actual work. And mental health awareness was a very, very big thing in the FCSS strat planning. It's becoming very critical.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phillips. There's no questions or anything from Councillor Phillips, and we will I'll make the motion to accept 11.2, the councillor reports from Councillor Auld, Councillor Comprero, Councillor Fraser, Councillor Hutchinson, and Councillor Phillips for information. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on in the agenda, we're at 12.1 with an action list for July 5th, 2022. And Mr. Kraus, I think you're all caught up, even though you just got back from holiday. I don't have any. Does anyone have any administrative inquiries? Oh, sorry, Councillor Phillips. I apologize.
I do have one administrative inquiry, just in regards to
Your worship, sorry, Councillor.
Yep,
Phillips,
you're
just a
right.
motion to accept the actions. Before
Oh,
we move on to.
sorry, I thought you were making an action list. Sorry,
I'll make the
Councillor
motion.
Hutchinson
to accept the action list
for
for
information.
information.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect. Thank you very much. All in favor? And that's carried. So you have an administrative
Sorry.
inquiry.
I heard the word administrative. I got excited.
I
So-
know, I was thinking that it was an action list item.
So just a question about the seconder that we needed from the town of Innisfail for the motion for the Alberta municipalities resolution. I was just checking to see how that came.
Yes, that was about
So-
cannabis.
Yes, so your worship, to Councillor Phillips. Innisfil did get back to me. They wanted to do a little bit of research into the actual motion, and they're putting it on their July 11th agenda.
Okay, any other things? Seeing that there's no other items, I will, Counselor, or sorry, Laura, did you have something? We have no notices of motions. Sorry, I thought you were waving at me like I forgot something. We have no notices, motions, and nothing for closed session, so I will adjourn today's meeting. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.